So, a historical perspective. You know, I could talk to you about all kinds of things, but I thought it would be really interesting for you to understand how we actually got SIREN through at the NIH. And I think you might
Jeremy,
be...
can you hold that a little closer to...
Sorry, how we got SIREN through at the NIH. So, just going back to New Orleans, SAEM, May 2016, this was the SIREN, I think one of the first SIREN meetings that we had. I don't know if, I can't remember if we'd announced but this was the room. If you ignore the front chairs where nobody ever sits, there was standing room only. And it was really a testament to the interest in the community about SIREN. Since then, of course, much has happened, and you'll hear about that very, very soon. So that was SAM in New Orleans. And by the way, I brought this, I took this picture and I brought this back to NIH, and I actually put it up in a talk that I gave to my seniors about how important SIREN was, and I showed them, look, here's everybody waiting.
Did you notice, though, that David Wright is fast asleep?
Yes, I am. Yes, correct. As usual, as usual. So how did it all begin? Well, it began on April 4th, 2014, with a paper that I wrote, a draft proposal for discussion on the future of emergency care research at NHLBI and NANDS. And I outlined the problem, what I thought were the issues, how we have NET, we have the Rampart study going on, we had NHLBI funding for the ROC, which was going to end in 2016. The NET was not going to end. It was most likely, almost certainly, to have been reapproved for another cycle, but ROC was going. So I wrote this thing, and I won't go through it all with you, but that was the salient points, and I said, well, okay, what will NINDS and NHLBI get out of this? You've really got to, this is selling a product. And then I put these FAQs in, and what would happen to the existing NET coordinating center and data management center and how they would work, and perhaps most importantly of all, to get everybody's attention, I put this in, which was my guesstimate of how much this would cost NINDS and NHLBI, and I put, oh, look at all these savings. If we do this, instead of running a ROC-like network and a NET-like network, we will save, if we put them together, we'll save $2 million in direct costs per year. And so, isn't that a great thing? And they said, well, maybe it's a great thing. We're not really sure. So a month later, I had a meeting with some colleagues at NANDS. That was Walter Koroshetz, NHLBI, David Lathrop, and Monica Shah, and myself to go over this. And it's interesting that of those four characters, Walter, who was then deputy, has become director of NINDS. David Lathrop has retired. Monica Shah has gone into the private area, and I remain at OECR. So it seems like I'm here for a while. And we went through these issues, and we asked which model and how can we do this. And we hammered all these issues out. And again, this is in May, June of 2014. And then this is the timeline of what happened after that. SIREN was presented to them formally, and then if you look, there was a 2-year hiatus from April of 2014 until March of 2016, when all the backroom work was done. There was haggling over budgets and meetings that can only happen 3 months in advance, because that committee only meets one every 3 months. And then there was a review, there was a webinar that we put together. There was a reviewer orientation, so we had to orient the people who were actually going to score the applications and tell them what we were looking for. We had to release the summary statements. Once we'd chosen who the sites were, we had to get it approved by council. We had to release the NOGAs, and I put down February 2018 first trial expected to start. And what is the official? Do we have a hard start yet? Hard start for Hobbit? Yeah. What's the latest? June. All right. So February. So that's not bad, right? So I expected to do it in February, June. That's pretty good. So that's the timeline of this thing, and you can see that even if you get people on board and say, okay, you know, we get the idea, they have to approve it internally, and it goes up several committees and can be knocked down at any single stage. I also had a lot to do. This is just one of many to-do lists that I had to figure out. And it involved, you'll see DOD. There were lots of conversations at the beginning with DOD. We wanted SIREN to be a trans federal project that involved NIH and the Department of Defense. And everyone was very excited about this, including Walter Koroshetz and the DoD partners. We all got very excited because then we could do trauma, except, and this is true, the lawyers at both offices, NIH and DoD, could not figure out a legal way to transfer the money from DoD to NIH. We tried all kinds of clever runarounds, couldn't do it. And that is the reason that DoD is not part of SIREN. However, they cleverly formed their own network called LIGHTS, because lights and siren, clever. And no, really, and they're doing their work there. So we spoke to DoD, we had to have memoranda of understanding, we had to have a webinar and all this stuff. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and the arc of government moves slowly, but it moves in the right direction. Until finally we published the FOs in March. And as I said, we're now here in 2018. We have 2 funded studies, 3 about to be reviewed, and many more which you'll hear about, the ideas that are coming and coming more and more frequently. So we're in a very, very good place. So the second part, how will SIREN be measured? It's going to be measured in 2 ways. One is from the NIH perspective, and this is the first page of a confidential draft, which was a review of NET. Do you remember this? This was NIH commissioned Dr. Dorsey to review NET from all kinds of angles, financial, everything. How easy were the people to work with? What's Barson like in a room, right? These are important things that people wanted to know about. Hard metrics, softer metrics, comparative metrics, and they presented this to council at NINDS when we were talking about the future of the net, which I hope was actually going to become the future of SIREN. So the point here is this is taken very seriously. They wanted to do all these things. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but they wanted to. They had things like this, that how the net has had a large impact. They had financial metrics, and so going forward, what could the net improve? One thing that I think was really interesting was that they figured out that everyone thinks that the net could do more trials than it did, and I think that goes. I think you probably would. Those of you on the inside, might agree or disagree, but there was sort of a capacity that we can do this, and I think with SIREN we have a great capacity to do trials. So that's how that happens. So that's the NIH perspective. I have my own metric of how SIREN will be measured, and this is going to happen to SIREN in 4 or 5 years. There'll be one of these independent reviews of all the aspects, including, by the way, how the hubs did and their own metrics. But that's the NIH. I have my own metric, my own perspective, which is, have we wisely used taxpayers' dollars to help patients with medical emergencies get better? That's my metric. That's the metric I'm going to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.